I'm starting this stream.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Peace Islands Institute's Marian Islam Lecture. I hope you all are having a good evening and are safe and healthy. My name is Seniha, and I will be the presenter for this program today. Today, to give a brief introduction of myself, I'm a university student at the University of Hartford, majoring in architecture and design. As someone inspiring to go into civil rights law, I want to thank the Peace Science Institute of Boston for giving me the opportunity as a presenter. On behalf of Peace Science Institute of Boston, we would like to express our gratitude to Pastor David Rinas, who joined us tonight to moderate this event. We thank you for giving us your time. Pastor David Rinas was ordained to be a Lutheran pastor in 1974. Since then, he has served congregations in Connecticut, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Maine, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. While he retired in 2016, he and his wife, Doreen, continued to work with refugees and asylum seekers from many different countries. They have hosted 20 different families in their homes from Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa, and Central America. Pastor Rinas has long been interested in their interfaith cooperations among Christians, Jews, and Muslims. Their son, Joshua, is a Lutheran pastor in Michigan, and their daughter, Kendra, works with United Nations in Malaysia on immigrant issues. They have two grandchildren at the age of 19 months and 4 years. They live in Pepperell, Massachusetts, and have many new friends from the Turkish Cultural Center in Manchester, New Hampshire, and Peace Science Institute, Boston. Now I would like to welcome Pastor David.
Thank you very much, Seniha. It's an honor to be here, and thank all of you for being here tonight. Several years ago, I attended an iftar dinner for the first time. It was in Chelmsford, Massachusetts, and after I gathered my food and sat down, at a table, a young Muslim sat across from me, and he said to me, do you know that you cannot be a good Muslim unless you believe in the virgin birth of Jesus? Well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all. And it was a complete surprise to me that Christians and Muslims had Mary so much in common. And some years later, as I was trying to read an English translation of the Quran, we had a refugee staying at our home for about 2 months, and he was a Muslim from Iraq, and his name is Muhammad al-Baghdadi. I told him that it was difficult for me to understand the Quran because I couldn't understand the flow of it, and he said that it's best not to start at the beginning, but rather with something that I already knew. So he suggested Surah number 12, which is about Joseph, and immediately this is very familiar to me because I knew that story as a child from the biblical book of Genesis. And while the story in the Quran has different details, it was similar and quite familiar to me. Then my friend Muhammad suggested I read Surah number 19 about Mary. And there's more said about Mary in the Quran than there is in the Bible. And that really surprised me. Even though Mary is a central figure in the book of Luke, one of the 4 Gospels about the life and teachings of Jesus. With these similarities between the Bible and the Quran in mind, I was then able to read the rest of the Quran with understanding. So tonight I'm very excited to hear this lecture by Professor Zeki Saritoprak on the importance of Mary in Islam. Of course, there are many differences in the world's faith traditions, but when we discover the things that we have in common, we can come to some new mutual understandings and respect. This is essential if our faith traditions are going to be an influence for peace in our troubled world. Peace Islands Institute Boston is a nonprofit devoted to promoting interfaith and intercultural dialogue. We're welcoming everyone in a society with practical programs to connect people in real life. Our goal is to build loyal relationships, to collaborate on substantial service projects that contribute to society's benefit, and promote universal principles to contribute to greater understanding and peace. We passionately believe in the power of dialogue to change attitudes. On behalf of Peace Islands Institute, we express our gratitude to everyone who has joined us tonight. We thank you for giving us your time. We also thank the many organizations who have made this event possible. Thank you to the Peace Islands Institute of Boston, the Peace Islands Institute Connecticut, the Boston Dialogue Foundation, the Peace Valley Foundation, the Maple Foundation, and the Turkish Cultural Center in Manchester, New Hampshire. After the lecture, there will be a Q&A session with Dr. Zeki Saritoprak. Please feel free to send any and all questions to the YouTube chat box. Dr. Saritoprak has been teaching Islamic studies courses in the Theology and Religious Studies Department at John Carroll University, JCU later on, since 2002 and in 2003. Since then, he's become the inaugural holder of the Bediüzzaman Said Nursi Chair in Islamic Studies. At JCU, Dr. Saritoprak has been a tireless advocate for diversity and helping JCU to become a more welcoming place for Muslims and other minority students. He helped found and still serves as the advisor to the Muslim Student Society and often leads the group's Jummah or Friday prayers. Outside of JCU, Dr. Saritoprak has been a leader in dialogue and interfaith work. He's a member of the National Catholic Muslim Dialogue and is currently the Muslim co-chair for the Midwest Catholic Muslim Dialogue, both of which are co-sponsored by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and the Islamic Society of North America. In his many writings, including his books on Islam's Jesus and Islamic spirituality, and his countless public appearances, Dr. Saritoprak has become a tireless advocate for dialogue, reconciliation, and peace among the adherents of the world's religious traditions. He's currently working on a manuscript for a book on Islamic eschatology, and I'm looking forward to reading that. Welcome, Dr. Saritoprak.
Thank you very much, David, for this wonderful, generous presentation, generous bio of myself. I'm honored to be here. It's a great pleasure. And I hope what you have said would be also a prayer for me to be in that level, to continue that efforts in this regard. So our topic is Mary in Islam, the place of Mary in Islam. I will basically start with Mary's story in the Quran and how, it is mentioned in the beginning of her life, and actually prior to her life, her mother is mentioned in the Quran. So if we start with her family, her mother is not named in the Quran, but her father, Imran, is mentioned in the Quran. And also there is a chapter named after Imran. And also we know that there is a chapter named after Mary in the Quran. Chapter 19 of the Quran is named after Mary. So Mary's mother, we don't know her name in the Quran, but in the commentaries of the Quran, her name is Hannah. Hannah, or maybe modern day would be Anne or Anna, perhaps in English, that's how it is Englishized. She prays to God to have a baby, but a boy, so that she would dedicate this boy baby to the temple. And she is pregnant. God accepts her prayers. She is pregnant. And she says, Lord, I am dedicating what is in my womb to your temple, to your service. So that is the beginning of the life of Mary. And she expects that she will have a boy baby, not a girl baby. Traditionally, at that time, boy babies were accepted for the temple and not girls. But she gave birth to Mary. And we see her conversation with the divine. She says, Lord, I have given birth to a girl, and you know that girls and boys are not the same. They are not the same in perhaps being accepted for the service of the temple. Now, Islamic scholars are saying that did God accept her prayer or not? Because she said, Lord, give me a baby that I will dedicate this baby to the service of the temple. But she expected a boy. They say that actually God accepted her prayer in a better way, because she gave birth to Mary. So Hannah gave birth to Mary, and Mary would be the mother of Jesus. And in the Islamic teaching, Mary is so remarkable personality that it is not comparable to one male, two males, three males. So she is, her prayer is accepted in a better way. They would say, sometimes when you pray to God, and apparently your prayer is not accepted, apparently, but in reality, it is accepted in a better way. That is the story of Hannah. Hannah's prayer was accepted in a better way. So basically, Mary is born, and she is it's believed that her father passed away, and then she needs someone to take care of her. So the Quran speaks of the story of people who are competing, who would be taking care of Mary. And eventually, Zechariah wins the competition. And Zechariah takes care of Mary. He became the person who would be in charge of Mary. And Mary was accepted to the temple as well, as a kind of exception. Mary found a space, a kind of chamber inside of the temple. And in the Quranic narrative, we see that when Zechariah would visit Mary, he would always see some food with her available. And Zechariah would ask Mary, I didn't bring this food. Where did you get this food? And Mary would say, this food is from my Lord. He gives sustenance for those whom he would want with no counting, in an unlimited way. So my Lord brings this food to me, he would say to Zechariah. Now, in the Gospels, we have the story of Joseph and Mary. There is no mention of Joseph in the Quran. Yes, there is Joseph in the Quran, but not this Joseph. There is Joseph as a prophet in the Islamic teaching, the son of Jacob, who would be a great leader in Egypt, a great Muslim tradition would not call him the king of Egypt, but would say the minister of economy, the one who would be charging in the economy of Egypt at that time. And Joseph, that Joseph is a prophet. The Joseph that is mentioned in the gospel with regard to Mary as fiancé of Mary is not mentioned in the Quran. What is mentioned in the commentaries of the Quran is that there was a person whose name was Joseph, and Joseph was a pious person, not fiancé of Mary, because in the Islamic teaching, Mary never married. That's why the birth of Jesus is a miracle. And this pious person, after Zechariah was too old, he was unable to take care of Mary. Zechariah asked Joseph to take care of Mary and protect her. That is the story of the birth of marriage, the birth of Mary and the relation between Joseph and Mary. So in 2 chapters of the Quran, there are details of the story of Mary. One in chapter 3 of the Quran, there are stories. And then the other is chapter 19 of the Quran, where the chapter itself named after Mary. So if we look at Mary from an Islamic perspective, she is the only woman mentioned in the Quran by name in the Quran, and she's mentioned in the Quran together with Jesus. In fact, she is, and her son, the Quran says, are signs of God to humanity. Both of them are divine. Each of them would be a divine sign for human beings, especially in the case of birth of Jesus would be a miracle. So it is a sign, in a sense, it's a miracle that is extraordinary situation that Mary encountered. So what are the attributes of Mary in the Quranic language? Basically, she is the pious one, the pious. It's her title. And in fact, I checked the word Maryam, because the Arabic name for Mary, the Quranic name for Mary is Maryam. And Maryam is not an Arabic word. Definitely is not an Arabic word, because it doesn't fit the Arabic grammar. Most probably it is Aramaic word. And all commentators of the Quran would say it means pure. So Mary means the pure one or purified one, because several Quranic verses are mentioning Maryam as when God speaks to Mary, says, I have purified you. Allah has purified you, O Maryam. So she is, that's the meaning also of her name, actually. So this is one of her attributes. Another attribute that is mentioned, she is obedient to the will of God. She is constantly praying. In fact, in the chamber that is dedicated for her in the temple, that was the place where she would be constantly worshiping God. Another aspect of Mary, prostrating to God. Prostration. It speaks of Mary's prostration, that she would be obedient to God, she would pray to God, and she would prostrate to God. So the way that Muslims are praying today, as we know, they are bowing down, they are prostrating, they are putting their forehead on the ground as in 5 daily prayers. Mary would be prostrating to God according to the Quran, and bowing down before God again. So this Quranic verse in chapter 3 verse 43, saying that Mary, be obedient to your Lord, prostrating and bowing before your Lord. And Mary would be always following the command of the divine. So these are some aspects of Mary. And hadith, a saying of the Prophet, as you know, hadith means the statements of the Prophet, the sayings of the Prophet. In one hadith, the Prophet says Mary is the chief of the women of paradise. She is the highest of the women of paradise. So she is not the highest in this world. She is the highest also in the afterlife. She is the highest of the women of paradise. Another saying of the Prophet mentions Mary, again the highest of the women of the paradise, together with several other female characters in Islam. And these are Asiya, the wife of Pharaoh. Asiya was a very pious. Pharaoh was a very tyrant, cruel, with unbelievable cruelty personality, a tyrant in history that is considered a symbol of evil in the Muslim tradition, as Moses is considered symbol of goodness, Pharaoh is considered symbol of evil. His wife was a symbol of piety. That's unbelievable. And her name is Asiya in the Muslim tradition. So she is so remarkable. She says, Lord, build a palace with you in paradise for me and rescue me from the evil of Pharaoh. So Asiya is so prominent. The Prophet mentions Mary together with Asiya. This is one. The second woman that's mentioned also in this category, together with Mary, Khadijah, the wife of the Prophet of Islam, the wife of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. So Khadijah also among the highest women of the people of paradise. And the third woman that is also mentioned together with Mary in the Islamic teaching is Fatima. And Fatima is the daughter of the Prophet of Islam. So these four women are considered the highest women of paradise. And among these, Mary is the highest one, basically. So that is why she is chosen by God. In the Quranic language, actually, in several chapters, chapter 5, verse 42, clearly says, you have been chosen by God, O Mary. So there is a story that is really important. This directly related to Mary and also Jesus, because we cannot separate Mary from Jesus in the Quran. They are together. Actually, you know, sometimes I ask when I talk about my book, Islam's Jesus, I say, what is the most frequently mentioned title for Jesus? And the answer is Isa ibn Maryam, Jesus, the son of Mary. So always when Jesus is mentioned, the son of Mary. Mary is mentioned together with Jesus. So Mary is chosen by God and chosen above all women of the world. The Quranic verse says she is pure in the Quranic language. And now there is a story because of this purity of marriage, because she is purity of Mary, and because she is chosen, she will be the mother of Jesus. And that is, you know, what the Quran gives as an introduction of the visit of the angel. First, the Quran says, you have been chosen. And then the later verses, angel appears to her. So she was in a little bit separate place, the Quran says, to the eastern place of the temple, perhaps. And our spirit, the Quranic language, because the Quran is the word of God in the Islamic teaching. So Allah says our spirit. And our spirit appears to Mary. Our spirit in this case means angel Gabriel. Commentators of the Quran would say angel Gabriel appears to Mary. And that is the story that is very much emphasized in the Quran. Angel directly appears in the form of a human being. And Mary says, who are you? I take refuge in God, who is the most merciful from you. Who are you? Are you here to harm me? And angel says, in one Quranic verse, it uses plural. The other Quranic verse uses singular. So probably angel Gabriel and other angels with angel Gabriel, in the case if it is plural, if you accept the plural version of it. So angel says, Mary, God gives you good news of a word from him whose name is Messiah, Al-Masih, the Messiah. Jesus, his name will be Messiah Jesus, the Messiah Jesus, son of you, son of Mary. He will be honored in this world and in the next world. And he will be among those who are near to God. And then he said, I am a messenger of your Lord, came to you to give you the good news of a pure child. So this child is pure. Your name is pure. This child is pure, basically. The purity is very powerful in the message of the Quran when it comes to Mary and Jesus. In all aspects, you will see this purity. The child that is pure. So I am giving good news about this. You will be pregnant and you will have a pure child. This is, giving good news to Mary. So what is the reaction of Mary to that? Mary says, Lord, how can I have a son when no mortal has touched me? How can I have a child and I am not touched by any human being? And the angel says, even so, God creates what he wills. And when God says for something be, it happens. When God says for something be, it happens. For God, it's not difficult to give you a child without being touched by any human being. And Mary becomes convinced that this is a message from her Lord. And she accepts the divine message, and miraculously later she will become pregnant, and then she will give birth to Jesus, the baby Jesus, and basically she will bring her baby to her people, and how she will explain to her people this situation. Now imagine a personality that is a symbol of chastity in the Quran and in her society too, because she's so pious. And now she has a baby. Now, in the biblical narrative, because there is Joseph, in the appearance, it's not a big issue. But in the Quranic narrative, there is no Joseph. So how she will explain to her people? It's very difficult. And the Quran speaks of her frustration. She is so much frustrated, and she says, the Quranic language very powerfully saying, she said, I wish I was just totally being forgotten, as if I was never existed, because she would not know how she would explain to her people this situation, because there is a baby and she is not married. So definitely she will be accused of committing adultery. So under these circumstances, there are some stories that when she gives birth, angel calls her and says, Mary, don't worry, just shake the palm tree next to you and the fresh fruit will come down for you. So the dates will come and you will be able to eat them. No need to worry about your food. Yes, that is very powerful message for her. But then after the baby is born and she is carrying the baby, how she will explain? Again, a message comes to her. And that's why it's a revelation from God to her. And that's why some Islamic scholars would say she was a prophet of God because she received revelation from God through angel Gabriel. And the angel tells her through this revelation of God that when you take your baby to your people, don't speak. Don't speak. Remain silent. You can use sign language, but not speaking. So she basically takes her baby to her people, and carrying the baby, and exactly it happened what she expected. They said, it is in Quran, chapter 19, verse 28 to 29. Mary, you have surely committed a monstrous thing. Your father was not a wicked man, nor was your mother unchaste. She pointed to the child. So Mary pointed to the child. Mary pointed to the child as if she said, don't ask me, ask the baby. Because she didn't speak, she promised. Allah sent her revelation that she should not speak. So she didn't speak. She just pointed at the baby. And one of my colleagues, Christian colleagues said that there is a picture of Mary in early churches that the baby Jesus in her arm and she is pointing at the baby. So he said probably this is inspired, especially in the Eastern Orthodox Church. And he said probably this is inspired by this Quranic verse. So she pointed to the child as if she said, don't ask me, ask the baby. And I look at the Quranic verses, the Quranic commentaries of the Quranic verses about the age of Jesus at that moment. They say generally he was 11 days old. So Jesus was about 11 days old. Possibility, because it's not in the Quran. And they said, how shall we speak to one who is still in the cradle? How can we talk to a baby who is in cradle? He will not be able to talk to us. And according to the Quran, to the holy book of Islam, Jesus spoke from his cradle and declared the innocence of his mother. So he said, very powerful statement. I am the servant of God. God has made me his prophet. God has given me the book and commanded me to pray, to give charity, and to be kind to my mother. Peace be upon me. When I was born, when I am resurrected, and when I will die, and when I am resurrected. So this is the verse of the Quran, that the final part of the verse, God commanded me to be kind to my mother. My mother is innocent. In other words, Jesus declared the innocence of his mother. And it's believed that after that, there is no any reference that they persecuted Mary or they punished Mary for this. Because according to the rule, to the laws of the time, if she had committed adultery, she would be punished for that. But there is no any references about this. So basically, this suggests that the miraculous speech of Jesus convinced people that Mary's situation was an extraordinary situation. So this is the story of the birth and the frustration and the miraculous response of Jesus to declare the innocence of his mother as well. So in final words, I like to say also about this question: is Mary a deity in the Islamic teaching? The answer is no. The Quran clearly says that Mary, yes, she is pious. She is the chief of the women of paradise. She is chosen by God, but she is not a deity. So in the Islamic teaching, you should not consider Mary as a deity. You can ask as intercession. Now some Muslim scholars will say intercession is, in fact, the Sunni tradition of Islam accepts intercession. And the meaning of intercession is that you ask God for the sake of good people. Oh Allah, give me your mercy for the sake of your prophets, for the sake of Mary. For, a person may ask God for something for the sake of pious people. It's not against Islamic teaching. It is called intercession. Although some extreme groups will say this is even not allowed, but the majority of Muslims will say this is allowed. So Mary has that quality of intercession, but not a deity. So I remember prior to this lecture, I received a question about how about these Muslims who are visiting the shrine of Mary in Ephesus? They are going there. If they are not married, they are asking, oh Allah, help me for the sake of Mary to find a woman to marry, or a woman will ask to find a husband. They go there. So what is that? Well, it is, first of all, it is not really exactly Islamic, because they go and put some pieces of fabric on her grave, on her temple, and the area. It's a kind of small church built on the grave of Mary. That's what is believed. We don't know exactly how much it is accurate historically, but there are many accurate information, many reliable information on that. So it's not exactly Islamic, but if you say something and ask God for the sake of Mary, it should be okay. Still, it is not a deity. So Mary is not considered a deity, basically. And I think I will stop here. One aspect that maybe to elaborate a little bit is that Mary can be really an important figure of dialogue between Muslims and Christians, because Mary is so important in the Islamic teaching and very important in the Catholic tradition, especially in the Catholic tradition, and in general in the Christian tradition. So because of this, I think it should be an important aspect of dialogue. I wrote 2 articles on Mary published by Oxford University Press, I think Oxford Bibliography Online. If you Google it, it should come. And then another article, a chapter for the Oxford Mary Handbook, Oxford Handbook on Mary. again, from an Islamic perspective. So for the details, please go to those articles. And I think I will stop here, and I will be glad to answer your questions if you have any question. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saritoprak. This is fascinating listening to you, because I come to the same story about Mary, of course, from a Christian tradition, and some portions of the way you tell the story, especially about the encounter between Mary and the angel Gabriel. I mean, the words are ringing in my mind from the Bible as you're speaking them from the Quran, and that's fascinating to me.
You are right.
But also, there's some differences too, and I just want to start off with one of my own questions.
Yes, please.
There is that story in the Gospel of Luke, and obviously you've read the Christian traditions as well about Mary. That the poem in Luke chapter 2, which is called the Magnificat, where Mary expresses her gratitude toward God for what God is doing with her, but also expresses a profound sense of justice and peace in the world. And so my question is, would you recommend that Muslims also read the accounts in the Bible about Mary as part of the dialogue?
I will recommend, actually, maybe there is really a good book written on this that might be very good. Jack Miles, I don't know if you have heard of him, a professor of religious studies at University of California, Irvine, wrote a book on God in the Quran, but there is a section on Mary in the Quran and in the Bible. He very beautifully make a good comparison, and I was fascinated by reading it. Definitely, I would say read the Bible, because if it is too, like short, people may not get it fully, then a kind of secondary source would be Jack Miles' book. Yeah, absolutely. I think it is very important to read the Bible and the Quran. And I know some Muslims who are having now the QB meetings, Quran Bible meetings. They come together and they read. 1 week they read from the Quran and 1 week they read from the Bible. So I think this is remarkable. So why not? They should come together. And in Islam, there are 4 great books of God. Great books. There are small scrolls, but the great books are 4, and Muslims have to believe in them. First, the Torah. Muslims have to believe in the Torah. Second, the Psalms. Muslims have to believe in the Psalms. And the third, the Gospel. The Gospel of Jesus. Muslims have to believe in the Gospel. And the third, the Quran, and that is the Holy Book of Islam. So in their original formats, all of these are considered the divine revelation, and Muslims have to believe in it. When I say in the original format, because Muslims would not call the translation of the Quran as the Quran. They would say that is the translation of the Quran. The Quran is the original format one, the one which is in the original format, the Arabic one. Yeah, thank you, David. That's a very good question.
Thank you. Obviously, I've not read the original. I've read a translation.
Yes, it is true.
And I'm a part of one of those groups where we read the Bible and the Quran together, and that's been so interesting.
That's wonderful. You have that group in your area also?
Yes.
Oh, that's
we've
wonderful.
been doing it. It's a Southern New Hampshire group, and we've been doing it, of course, this year on Zoom.
That's wonderful. That's remarkable.
Yeah. And I've been surprised to find places in the Quran where the Prophet, peace be upon him, strongly urges the Jewish people to obey the Torah and Christians to obey the Gospels.
It is true.
And that's in the Quran.
You are right.
I find that to be fascinating.
You are right.
Baruz, I think there's some questions that we can be looking at, but I don't see them on my screen.
I see 3 questions on the chat. One
Okay.
says, could you tell us about the significance for Muslims of Maryam Ana, the house of Mary that is located near the ancient ruins of Ephesus in Turkey? And the second question, the French Catholic scholar Louis Massignon believed that Mary is the bridge that binds Jews, Christians, and Muslims in relationship with one another. Can you speak about that from the Muslim perspective and interfaith relations? And the third one, are Muslims familiar with the gospel narratives about Mary? How are they understood in Islam? For the first one, I briefly mentioned, and actually if you allow me, if the host allow me, I have the picture of that Maryam Ana house. Let me see if I can share it with you, if the host allow me. I think it seems like, yeah, he is allowing me. Thank you, the host. Let me see. Okay, this is basically the Mary's house in Ephesus. This is the one. And Muslims in the area, in Turkey generally, would come and visit this place in a sense of respect for Mary. It's very beautiful. I personally visited twice. It's very beautiful. And really you feel a kind of sense of tranquility. And in the beginning, there is also a quotation from famous Muslim historian, Al-Tabari, who says that one of the disciples of Jesus later took Mary to Ephesus. So that's why I said it has some reliable references that she actually was buried here. So people in coming this area, and they put something on these small places, kind of binding something, putting something there, putting some fabric there, in expectation that their hope will be fulfilled, or their prayer would be accepted. So if a lady doesn't have baby and she wants to have baby, they would come here. They would ask God for the sake of Mary. You know, it depends how people would interpret it, how people will look at it. So in Islam, you have to ask God directly. You know, you don't need to have mediators. But if you ask God for the sake of the beloveds of God, that is perfectly fine. And sometimes I say this is, you know, in modern day would be like recommendation letter, you know. What is the meaning of recommendation letter? You know, the committee will make a decision, but that recommendation letter helps. So God is the decision maker. But if you ask for the sake of a beloved of God, someone who is beloved by God, like Mary, like Jesus, like a prophet of Islam, like a saint, that is acceptable. That is Sunni Islam would say it is acceptable. The majority of Sunnis, the majority of Muslims would say it is acceptable. That's why the concept of intercession has taken place in the manual of Islamic theology. A group of Muslim theologians would say, no, that will be not acceptable because it becomes an obstacle for the interconnectedness with the God, with the divine. But the majority accepted that. So just to have this detailed information. So the people are coming here as a respect for Mary. And interestingly, I think the Pope John Paul II visited. Pope Francis, I don't know if he has visited yet or not. The previous Pope also visited. So it is also a very important site for the Catholic tradition as well. Other Christians are coming and visiting this place. So at least currently, it is a place that is making a connection between Muslims and Christians, actually. So to a certain extent, this is an answer to the question that can Mary be a bridge between Muslims and Christians? Yes, definitely. She is a bridge between Muslims and Christians. You know, in my book, Islam's Jesus, I have a little bit about Mary as well. Of course, in my 2 articles by Oxford University Press, I have details of those information. But my argument is that in the book, Islam's Jesus, the feature of humanity is based on dialogue between Christians, Muslims, and Jews. Christians, Muslims, and Jews must come together and have dialogue. These are Abrahamic people, the members of Abrahamic traditions, and they are so much close to each other. And this way, they may bring peace to the world. I calculated roughly the population of Muslims, Christians, and Jews together is about 60% of humanity. That makes a big change. You know, if they come together and work for peace, they can bring peace to the world. And when I say Abrahamic traditions, I always say not to exclude other traditions. When there is peace, everybody will benefit from it. So Buddhism will benefit, Buddhist tradition, members of Buddhist tradition will benefit from peace. Hindus will benefit from peace. That's not to exclude them. But because this family of Abraham is so much close to each other, first they should come together and they should work for peace that will benefit everyone. So, and I think Mary, with this regard, is an important bridge, and they can elaborate on her life. They can elaborate on her prayer. It is interesting. If you look at the commentaries of the Quran, there are so much information. There you will see so much information about Mary and Mary's prayers in the Islamic teaching. Jesus and Jesus' prayers. And that's why Louis Massignon was fascinated by this, and he argued again that Muslims and Christians could come together on the personality of Mary and discuss together the situation of Mary, the spirituality of Mary. And in fact, that's why it's very well known that he established a Sufi order, a mystical order that is called Maryamiyya, the order of Maryam. Especially it is very well known in France. Maybe in the other part of the world is not very well known, but in France is very well known. My colleague, Professor Sidney Griffith, wrote a lot on Louis Massignon. Today, I had attempted to meet with him. He's somehow I couldn't manage, but I was going to ask him, could you please tell us more about Maryamiyya, because he is the expert of Maryamiyya actually. So that is about the Louis Massignon. And are Muslims familiar with the gospel narratives? I would say classical Islamic scholars were very familiar with the story of Maryam and Jesus in the gospel. They read the gospel. Modern day Muslims, as Reverend David said, they have some groups, as you know, as I also know, that are reading together. They become familiar actually with both texts, but generally speaking, I would say not very familiar with the reading of the gospel. It's not very well known, and occasionally language is a big obstacle, but sometimes you see the gospel in other languages. To my knowledge, it is not very familiar, but in the scholarly world, I would say at the universities, you know, at those who are involved in these type of studies, of course, they are familiar. They read the entire Bible, I would say. I personally read the entire Bible, you know, from the beginning to the end. And then there's another question. Could you please give an explanation of Joseph that you mentioned? Which is Joseph? Now, there are two Josephs mentioned. I mentioned two Josephs. That's why the Joseph that you mentioned, you say, I mentioned two Josephs. One is in the Quran, and that is Yusuf alayhi salam. Joseph, peace be upon him. In Islam, he is the prophet, one of the prophets of God. Now, his story is mentioned in chapter 12 of the Quran, and the Quran says this is the most beautiful story. He has a dream. He tells his dream to his father. His father is Jacob, Yaqub alayhi salam, Jacob, peace be upon him. This is in the Quran. I am telling what is in the Quran. And his father says, he feels that Joseph will be a prophet because that dream shows something. He says, I saw 11 stars, and the sun and the moon were bowing down before me. And his father says, don't tell this story to your brothers. They will feel jealous about you. And he was right. His brothers became jealous, and they said to their father, we are going to have to go outside to play, and we like to take Joseph with us. And he said, I'm afraid something happens to him. Wolves would eat him. And they said, you know, we are a group of people, we are all there. That will be terrible if we are unable to protect Joseph. And then their father is convinced, and he gives Joseph to them. So they put Joseph in a well. To make a long story short, they put Joseph in a well, and then a caravan, an Egyptian caravan comes, and they found the baby, this young boy, it is believed that he was 12, 13 years old, in the well, and they took him, and they sold him at the slave market in Egypt. The king of Egypt, the pharaoh of the time, bought him. So it's a long story, as I said. That is Joseph. And eventually, he became the king of Egypt, kind of the highest position in Egypt, not the king per se, but the person who is in charge of the administration of Egypt. The other Joseph is not mentioned in the Quran. That's why Muslims don't know that Joseph a lot. The Christian tradition knows about that Joseph more because he is mentioned in the gospel. And that is Joseph, known as the fiancé of Mary. Some would say the husband of Mary. Some would say the fiancé of Mary. Mary, when she gave birth to Jesus, actually Joseph supported Mary. We have in the commentaries of the Quran the name of this Joseph as exactly Joseph, but he is presented as a pious saint, pious personality that supported Mary. Under that conditions, a woman by herself would not be able to survive. So God helped Mary by supporting her through this pious person. And That was at the advice of Zechariah. Zechariah asked Joseph to take care of Mary after he was weak, and then he passed away. So when Jesus was born and Mary together with Jesus, it is believed that Joseph was afraid that something would happen to them. He took Mary and Joseph to Egypt. So they spent a little time in Egypt. Mary was also experienced some kind of migration, and then they came back. So that is Joseph. That Joseph is different than the Joseph that's mentioned in the Quran. But that Joseph that is connected to Mary is not mentioned in the Quran. And that is why when Mary has a baby, she doesn't know how to explain. How I will explain to people that I have a baby? And God says, don't worry. I will find a way that will declare your innocence. And that when Jesus spoke from his cradle. I hope I answered this question.
This particular explanation you have as you're describing the story of Joseph, the first Joseph, who was also mentioned in the Quran. There's a long story about the same Joseph in the book of Genesis. And as you were reciting the story, making a long story short, it sounded exactly like I would make the long story short if I was explaining the one from Genesis.
It is true. Yeah, in the book of Genesis, that is long. Actually, you are right. It is detailed there. So it seems like there are no more questions. Am I right?
It looks that way. And we've exceeded an hour. This has been
okay. I think then we are good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I'm reminded in this dialogue that we're having in your lecture tonight that we could do this again sometime. And we could talk about Noah, or we could talk about Abraham or Job.
Absolutely.
Or so many other prophets that are in common with Jews and Christians and Muslims together. And some of the stories are so similar, and it seems like all of the stories fill in different details about the different characters, which makes our traditions so rich.
I will be happy to join you whenever it's possible.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend David. Thank you very much.
And we thank all of you who've joined us tonight, and we look forward to another time when we can get together in some other venue. So thank you all, and especially thank you to Peace Islands Institute Boston and all of our other sponsors. We bless you all, and inshallah, have a wonderful evening.
You too, you all. Bye.
Good night.